Hi, my name is Ciara Jean, and I'm doing the author discussion on Parable of the Sower, obviously, and I'm doing on chapters 10 through 15. I am going to be talking a little bit about its previous chapters just to get to know Lauren more in it and how Octavia Butler writes about her and how she portrays her. And so, just to, and I'm also going to be talking about the chapters and so forth and stuff like that, but I also wanted to discuss the sources that I used, which obviously I used the book, and then I also looked online for certain things that I didn't understand quite what she was talking about, which was, for like example, Earthseed. And I know Earthseed is a huge part in the book, but I couldn't quite grasp what she was trying to explain, and so I wanted to look it up to kind of clarify it. So I did use a little online, but not too much, just to clarify some things that I didn't understand, obviously. But so yeah. So to start off, I'm going to talk about a little bit about Lauren. And so Octavia writes about the main character, Lauren, and how it starts off when she was 15 years old, and she has this condition called hyperempathy, and she it's not necessarily like she wants it, and she got that from her mom. When she was pregnant, her mom didn't abused certain things, and so she came out with not hyperthermia, sorry, hyperempathy. And it also, that kind of takes a toll on her because she doesn't, her first of all, her dad doesn't like anyone to know it, so no one knows about it except for her family. And it really took a toll on her life because even when she saw a dead dog, she could feel the dog dying when she had to kill it. She could feel the dog losing its life and the life getting drained out of it. Or if her brother, for example, would always tease her about it, not necessarily tease her, but he would use it against her when he used pen to pretend he was bleeding and that she felt sorry for him. So that also took a toll on her life, and I'm sure that's going to have more to do with it as the story goes on from what I've read. But she also has four brothers as well, and one of them, Keith, he was a huge part in it for a good portion of the story and how he was a rebel, but I'll get to that later on. And she has a father who is a minister and a stepmother, Corey. And so her father is a minister, and she lives in this community in Robledo, I believe that's how you pronounce it. And she lives in a community that is made up of 11 houses, and it is surrounded by this huge wall that they put in, and it's supposed to be with metal or some scraps that can be bulletproof, but obviously it wasn't because other people died, or some people died, or they even intruded it by driving cars through it. And they thought it was penetrable. There we go. There's the word. So she lived in this community, and she lived with these same people for practically all her life. And she knew that once her father, he was kind of, I wouldn't necessarily say the leader of the community, but he was a huge part in it because he was the minister, and a lot of them, religion is a huge part in this book. And you could say that he had an influence on all the people that was living there. And she didn't necessarily, it started off with her about to being baptized, but she was such a coward, and how she explains it, that she didn't believe in what her father was preaching. She didn't believe what her father was saying and what he was saying to everyone else, but she went along with it because she thought that's what she was taught. Since she was taught that, that's what she thought she had to know and had to live by. So, but as she grew up, from going to 15, 16, 17, 18, whereas she's old, she's not 18 yet, but next year she would be. But I'll get to that later too. But she comes up with her own religion. Not necessarily her own religion, but her own belief. Her own, something that she believes in, or something that she wants to live by, and that she wants to continue on as she gets older and start giving other people that example of belief as well. And she's scared to share it with certain people, but she wants it to come out, and that belief is that God is change. And it says throughout so many chapters of the book, and it repeats this saying that she always says, which is, all that you touch, you change. All that you change, changes you. The only lasting truth is change. God is change. And she learns that everything is going to change, and she knows it, and she's the only one that isn't pretty much blindsided by the fact that everything is going to change. And I'll talk about that in later, but she wants other people to understand, but no one really listens to her because of how young she is. And you can tell that she has this mindset of how she wants to live her life, or how she wants to, but she's too cowardice, or she's too scared, because her father has always taught her that secure is better, or that you shouldn't scare people, or with new things that you can talk about. And so she wants to believe that everything is better when change is there. And she does that through different kind of steps in her life, not necessarily steps, but different events that happens, that everything is going to change. And it's just, she, yeah. So in chapter 10, it starts off with Keith. And to go back a little bit, Keith ran away, and he ran away. At first it was he ran away, then came back, and then he ran away again. And this time he came back with new shoes and new clothes. And his father pretty much beat him almost to death because Keith would not tell him where he got this new stuff. And he wasn't sure after that, you could kind of tell that it will never be the same. And she says it in the book that Keith's relationship with his father will never be the same because he will never forgive his father. And that's the same with Corey, because Keith was pretty much Corey's favorite son. Not hypothetically, but Keith was Corey's favorite son. And so you could tell that Corey would never forgive the father again. So that's just a little bit of back. And so after that time, Keith ran away. And after he ran away, he moved out of the house. He never came back because of his relationship and how he was treated by his father and stuff like that. And it just never went along. And he took the gun, Corey's gun, but he would come back and visit Corey and the family when the father wasn't there, and would give Corey money and would give the kids presents and stuff like that, and would leave before the father gets back. And so back to chapter 10, it starts off with Keith comes home, and Lauren makes dinner for them, and she makes rabbit stew. And before all her family comes back from the soccer game that her little brothers were in, Keith and Lauren talk, which is different because neither of them, it's different because they never got along. They never cared really about each other, and not necessarily, but they never got along, and they were very different, and it was a change of, for the matter, because they never got along, or for the matter, even talk. And so that was different. And the reason why they were talking was because Lauren wanted to know about the outside. Because Lauren, she is obsessed with the outside, and she thinks that everything is going to fall apart. And so she wants to go on to the outside, so she reads books and stuff like that. So when Keith comes home, she's so curious about the outside and how he survived. And so he tells her, and she doesn't necessarily agree with how he survived. And he says that he lived in a cardboard box for like 3 days. And he lived there while he could have found a corner or something like that. He lived there for 3 days, and he had no food, no money, no clothes, or he had clothes, but he had nothing. And so he robbed other people. Like, he robbed this old man of a sleeping bag and his money, and then eventually met this guy who was going to Alaska and killed him for his money and his supplies. And Lauren did not agree with that at all. She was, you could say, mad at Keith for the way that he did it. And when Keith comes back, he always brings money and he always brings stuff to his family, but he never explains, and they don't want to know because they already know how he gets it, which is he steals it or he gets it from other people. But then he starts living with these people who don't know how to read or write, and that's how he's starting to live now, was because he gets materials or things that he needs to survive by helping these people who don't know how to read and write. And so he gets shelter, he gets money, he gets all of these things that these people have stolen. And he's a part of their little group now, you could say. And Lauren does not agree with this at all. She thinks it's bad. She can't believe that he took a man's life. And so that was also, it was she didn't agree with it. But the last time that the last time Lauren saw uh Lauren saw Keith was was her birthday, and Keith came by to give her money. And so she comes and she gives him the money, and Lauren's like, I don't want that. I don't want that money. And she goes, give it to Corey. But then Keith was like, give it to her yourself. And so she did that. And then it makes this huge jump that the next journal entry that she does, Keith is dead. He died. And the way that he died was he was skinned. And he was skinned, like, you could almost say alive, because some skin marks was gone longer than other. And he was tortured, and it was like heartbreaking. But his father didn't cry, and Lauren didn't cry, but Corey was, of course, heartbroken because she was his favorite. But after that, Corey didn't really trust Lauren anymore, or the father, because she thinks that the father and Corey are kind of the cause of his death in some sort of way. It didn't really explain much about that, but that was also a sign that the relationship that they had, just Corey doesn't really, I don't believe, feels belonged in that family anymore, because of it's always the father and Lauren. And so that made a huge toll and a huge change when it came down to it. So in chapter 11, Lauren knows at this point that the community is going to fall apart, because since Keith's death, they've had a numerous amount of robberies and people breaking in, and 3 of them were successful. And she knows that everything is going to change, and everything that is changing because of the things that Keith has brought upon the community. And so she knows everything is going to fall apart, and in the next year she's going to be 18. So she wants to help the community, and she wants to become a night watcher, but she can't because she's not 18 yet and her father won't let her. And also in chapter 11, the KSF comes, and it's pretty much this community, and everyone thinks it's a community of slavery, where you work for somewhere to live and somewhere to eat and shelter and some stuff like that. But her father doesn't want to go, even though Lauren thinks it's a good idea to go, because it's a change, and she knows that the community is falling apart. But the father doesn't want to go because he feels so secure in his community that he's in now, that he doesn't want to be jobless or homeless or stuff like that. And so it takes a toll on the family again, because Corey wants to go, Lauren wants to go, and it's just like it's their family is falling apart pretty much. And her best friend Joanne and her family, they've decided to move. They're going to Olivar, and they decided to take that job. And by this time, Corey realizes when she turns 18, she's leaving. She wants to head up north, and she wants to go to Canada. And by this time, she wants to spread her belief and her system of religion that to everyone, because she thinks what she knows is right. And so by this time, she has mindset that change, and it's happening. It's happening right now, but everyone else is still blindsided, and they can't see it. But like I said, when she turns 18, she's gone, and she knows it, but she has to help her family, and she doesn't want to leave that until then. And so she's going to help until that time comes. So in the next chapter, the main part of it is that her father leaves for work but then never comes back, and so the whole community comes together with all the adults, and they try to look for him, and they look for him for many days, and they find this limb that doesn't match the father, but it scares her, and it scares everyone that's in it. And it's like they have a eulogy for him, and she says her sermon for him instead, since he's not there, and she says the sermon for him, and everyone says they love it, but she feels like she's empty. But it's also, they have a eulogy, and once they couldn't find him, they have a funeral for him. And it's hard on her, because now she knows that she has to take care of her family. She has to take care of her before she can even leave, because she can't leave anymore. Because her father, there's no income, there's no nothing. And Corey, she begs pretty much for a job at the college to take care of her family, and she can't do that. And like Lauren can't do that because they have so many other places, just as the fire that happened, and they have to bring in another person. She has to take care of her, and so she can't leave, and that changes her whole aspect of what's going to happen. And it's taking a toll again on her life.